Welcome to the Supreme Love Project, where you learn to love supremely so you can live supremely. This is a Power Hour. This is the place where you can get the information you need to heal the terrors in your soul and launch a revolution in your life. Get ready. Take notes. Now, here's your host, Janine Staples.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Supreme Love Project. I am your host, Janine Staples. This is a new episode of the Cold Crush Teleseminar, and I have another powerhouse guest with us today. We have Tina James. Tina, are you there?
I am here, Janine. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Tina. I'm so glad to hear your voice. You are a major creative, you are a major powerhouse coach, and you help and support women to do really dynamic things with transitions in their lives. So I want to yield the floor to you and give you a few moments to just tell us how you came to this work, and what it is exactly that you offer to the world.
Well, thank you for this opportunity and this wonderful invitation to join this just amazing summit. You've really put together such a fabulous event, and I just am so happy to be a part of it. But I would love to share with everybody, I call myself the Moonlight Muse, and I've been fascinated, with moon phases, for a really long time, probably ever since I was a little girl. And one of the things I noticed and what has brought me to the work that I'm doing today, it's really all about transitions. It's about life transitions, business transitions, creative transitions. There's so many transitions that all of us go through in our lives. And this particular work I'm doing right now, I have two parts of it. I have journalingbythemoonlight.com, which is focused on my work with mothers in transition. And then I have the moonlightmuse.com, which is really focused with creative people working on various aspects professionally, creatively, personally. And it really is all about transitions. And I've had many transitions like so many of us had, but there was a really big one that I had back right after my son was born. And, long story short, he came into the world with some minor health issues, but they were enough that I had to make a very big decision to leave a very successful job at that time and stay at home with him. And it was really, I can't even describe it to you. It was something that I thought, okay, I can do this for a couple of years, no problem. But what happened to me, Janine, is I kind of got into the role of motherhood, and as much as I loved being a mother, I realized just how much of my identity had been lost by giving up my career. I had never realized until that time and that experience just how much of a career woman I was and how much that was part of who I was. And so I kind of went on this journey for a couple of years while I was staying at home with my son. And it was like rediscovering myself all over again. Who was I without this career? Who was I as a mother? Who am I really? And it was all about self-discovery for me. And I moved through that transition and ended up getting on another track in life altogether professionally, which is what I'm doing now. I ended up writing a book, Journaling by the Moonlight, A Mother's Path to Self-Discovery. I ended up doing a lot of workshops, writing. There was just so many things that came out of that experience, and connecting with other mothers who felt like I did, that there was a loss of personal identity in stepping into this role of motherhood and giving up so many other things that was a part of who I am. And I want to share with you, Janine, I'm kind of going through another phase myself right now. I'm on the verge of menopause. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm on the verge of it. And what I can tell you is just getting ready to move into a whole other transition now. I mean, I have teenagers now, and there's so many things happening with them. I've got one graduating high school this year, and I've got my daughter who is a freshman in high school, and I'm really noticing a lot of changes happening, in our family, in my life. And so I'm really on the verge of this other transition hormonally. There's so many things happening. So I'm all about the transitions in life, whether they're coming through life, professional, or creative. And I've created this beautiful system, a process, if you will, called Journaling by the Moonlight. And I take women on a journey through the moon phases as it relates to their transition, We start in the new moon phase, which is that very dark moon where you look up into the sky and you can't find it, but you know it's there somewhere. And then I take women through the phases and we gradually bring them into light as it relates to their transition. We really explore the darker parts of the transition and what they're afraid of, what doesn't feel so good. We take a look at the lighter parts of the transition and we look at the possibilities. We look at what's exciting about it, and we kind of play with the light and the dark, and we move through the phases of the moon where we move into the full moon and really honor this light that is emerging from within them and around them through this transition. And then we move into the blue moon. So there's kind of 8 natural phases of the moon, and I've added the blue moon for my process. So I bring women around to this blue moon, which is all about legacy. It's all about life purpose legacy is what I love to call it, because it's really about creating a legacy in the world that's very purposeful, very meaningful, not only to you as a woman, but to other people, and creating a ripple effect in the world. We're all so unique, and we're all blue moon beings, as I like to call everyone, and we're putting forth our best light and our creativity and all of these wonderful things, and we're creating this beautiful ripple in the world that touches people in magical and meaningful and really impactful ways.
Yeah. Lisa, I'm just listening to you and I feel like a melody. I'm swaying to the rhythm of your voice and the power of your words. There are so many ways that we as women experience just glimpses of our mystical power, of our ethereal power, of our connection to the earth, the moon, the stars, the water, and the waves. And then we sort of pull out of that knowledge and that awareness because we're really anchored and tied to this masculine framework, this really hyper machismo framework that runs a lot of the world. And we miss out, I think, unfortunately, on what you're talking about, this rhythm of life and moving through it gracefully and understanding what that might look like in general and maybe for ourselves specifically. So thank you for sharing that that example and that framework for understanding. So I really would like to get into what you're talking about when you say the moon has these phases and sort of journaling to these phases. Can we go over that again? Simply because the women who are listening in now from all over the world, some of whom are following you and some are following me and other people, may not be familiar with these phases. And if you can, I'd like for you to talk to them in greater detail so that we can follow along and give some context.
Absolutely. Well, I know we've got a little bit of time on this conversation, and this is certainly, for anybody that wants to have more information about this, they can certainly follow me. I blog about it. I talk about it on social media. But just kind of in a nutshell, we've got 8 natural moon phases. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I've added the blue moon because I think it's so important to the process I have. And so if you think about looking up at the moon, and if you were just to sit outside, for 28 days, because the moon is a 28-day cycle. And if you kind of think about a 28-day cycle, most of us, when we're menstruating, it's on a 28-day cycle. So the moon is very much a feminine energy. It's very much a feminine energy. And I love what you had just said, Janine, because you were just kind of talking about, gracefully moving into it. The moon energy invites us to feel into life rather than think about it. Thinking is wonderful, and we're all humans, and we have these wonderful brains, and we certainly want to think and analyze things. But the gift we have as women is we're feelers. And so when we feel into an experience, it's really powerful because when we start opening up the way we feel about something, we can start making some decisions and then thinking a bit more clearly and more authentically. So if you can imagine standing outside, let's just imagine it's summer, nice warm breeze, and it's completely dark, and we're looking up at the sky, we're looking around, we're wondering where the moon is. Well, if you can't see the moon, it's because we're in the new moon, phase. It's that dark moon, that place of new beginnings, that place of unknowingness. So in a transition, that's really where we start. Any life transition starts in a place of darkness, in a place of unknowing, in a place of how did I get here? So when I invite women through the phases of the moon, I always give them powerful questions, and we take a journey through the actual moon phases. So I've got a lot of different programs that are designed to match up and to synchronize with the actual moon phase. So I've got those programs, and I've also got programs that we're still working with the moon phases, but we're doing it more metaphorically. So it's not like the actual phases of the moon. But in that place of new beginnings and in the new moon, that's where we begin to kind of explore where we are and get a good understanding of the groundwork, you know, what brought us to this moment. So we're kind of doing some deep questioning here, getting really, really clear on how we got here, what we're letting go of, you know, what doors are closing, what doors are wanting to open, and we get real, you know, clear about that. And then we're moving into the next moon phase, which is the waxing crescent. And that's where the moon starts to peak her light. You start to kind of see that little glimmer of light. And we start to look at ourselves in that phase. We start to kind of see a little peek of our own light and what is there in this transition. You know, what's the next evolution of us that's trying to peek out in light? And again, I'm giving very powerful, deep questions with each of these phases. So for anybody who is working with me, whether it's privately in a group, a workshop, or a retreat, we're taking all of these things very deep. So because we have such a short amount of time, I'm just going to kind of just jump you through all of this. So we move from the waxing crescent into the first quarter. And if you're looking up at the moon, what you're seeing is kind of half light, half dark. So you're seeing half of the circle lit up and the other half is dark. And that's where we begin to look in the light and the dark. You know, we're looking at this transition. What's the darker part? What is that part that makes you feel a little scared? You know, what's the scary piece of this? What are you afraid of? What are the obstacles? And we really do some deep work there and explore that. And then we look at the lighter part. Well, what's the exciting piece of this? You know, what are the opportunities and the possibilities? And we begin to look at the lighter and darker pieces of that. And then we step into the next phase, and we're kind of, you know, looking at the waxing gibbous because you're going over to 3/4 there. And this is where we start to look at support systems. You know, we feel like we're approaching light, and then we start thinking, well, gosh, who's going to support me through this transition? So we really start to look at your support system and get clarity around that. Then we move into the full moon where it's all full of light. And we really start honoring that if you stood up in your biggest light, if the best thing could happen to you in this beautiful transition, what would that be? Let's get really clear on that, and how would that honor your light? So we're playing around a lot there with light. Then we move forward again, and the moon's kind of going back the other way in her light. So we're now looking at the waning gibbous, so it kind of shifts. We start to look at the bigger picture here of the light, you know, the ripple effect. What could happen if I honor my full light? What could be happening around me? What could I be touching in the world? You know, what could be the ripple effect of this? And so we start to look at that. What's the big picture of this? And then we move into the last quarter. Again, we're back at that light and that dark piece again, and we're starting to look at the steps. If I want to honor this big picture, if I want to step into my light, if I want to touch people in this way, if I want to create this ripple effect, what steps do I need to take? And so we're kind of playing with those steps and looking at the light of it and the dark. You know, we start taking steps. We might get a little afraid of those steps, so let's kind of play with that in this moon phase. And then we're moving a little closer again, the waning, and then we're back to the waning crescent. So we're back at a crescent, but it's going the other way. And this is where we start to honor the ebb and flow of life, because the best laid plans, this is one of my favorite phases of the moon, because we can set the best intentions and we can have all of these beautiful goals and dreams and visions, but what happens if we're kind of knocked off a little bit? What happens if they don't go as we've planned? How do we work with the ebb and flow of life? And we do a lot of work around this so that I can help women to really understand that life does ebb and flow, and how can we move with it gracefully. And then we move into the blue moon. And that is really honoring the legacy of a woman. It's honoring how this transition fits into the legacy. How does it become a part of the legacy? And it's all about really helping a woman see the power of who she is, the magic of who she is, why she's here on this planet, and the legacy that she's here, and the ripple effect that she's meant to create. And it's really, really, really honoring that in the blue moon phase. So that's really a quick snapshot of the process I've created. And again, we go into it much, much deeper in the programs that I do.
Mm. Wow, Lisa. I mean, these are just powerful. I'm sorry, I meant to say Tina. I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking of so many things in relation to what you're talking about in transitions. Because when a woman is going through the transitions, for example, of motherhood, and I'm not a mother yet, when you go through the transitions of motherhood, there's so much contention with power and control that one has to form a new relationship to. You know, the power of bringing a life into the world either through adoption or through your own body, accepting the responsibility, the governance and the control you have over another living being, and the gratitude that you must experience in nurturing that life and growing that life up, and then watching that life move further and further away from you into independence. That is filled with joy and pain. And then I think about the other relationships that women experience, maybe with a partner, if you've had a really powerful romantic love and you felt changed in the presence of that love, and that love waxes into something really big and huge, and you decide to consummate it, and you decide to make vows and be public and pledge. And if that partner passes away or dies, or if that person grows apart from you and there's a divorce that needs to happen, another life transition. You just talked about menopause. We just completed Hot Health, which is another Supreme Love project where we talked about physicality and sexuality and food and your body and how those things are wrapped up in lots of different transitions. And I'm thinking about all of these things, Tina, as you talk through the phases and how a woman might use your framework in order to map out her trajectory and mark her course. And I started to think about, especially when you talked about the light and the darkness, and how the darkness is about what maybe you are afraid of, what maybe a woman is nervous about or stressed about. And I really appreciated the process you talked about of looking at the light and what is the benefit, what is the power embedded in this transition. And really, so much of it sounds to me like creating a balance in life, in the perception of your life, and in the actuality of your life. Am I grasping it the way that you intend?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, too, with balance because, you know, and I love that you have kind of broken up your summit into the hot and the cold piece, and because it really is, you know, we can do, there's a lot of things that are happening, and I'll just use menopause as an example. There's a lot of things physically, you know, that we're dealing with in the world and with our bodies and all these other things, but there's a whole other world going on internally, you know, with our emotions. And with menopause in particular, you know, there's certainly these hormonal changes. You're noticing your body changing. You're noticing all of these things, you know, kind of coming and going. But there's something going on inside of you with your emotions, and there's a lot of doors closing and other doors, you know, opening. And it's really about, you know, like motherhood. You were talking about motherhood and raising children, and then they go off and kind of go to college and have their own lives. You know, we're always evolving. We're always evolving. And this is the beautiful piece of, I think, of what you're capturing in your summit is, you know, we're always evolving. We're evolving physically, we're evolving emotionally, we're evolving spiritually, mentally. You know, we're always in an evolution. I mean, from baby to young girl to teenager to mom to grandma, you know, whatever. I mean, we're always in an evolution and the ebb and flow. And, you know, every time that we're evolving, we're adding more to our legacy. You know, we're adding more. The stories get richer. The stories expand. And it's just such a beautiful time for women. And the moon, for me and for all of the women I've worked with, serves as a really beautiful metaphor. I have women say to me, I can never look at the moon in the same way after working with you, Tina, because every time I see the moon, I'm always thinking, what phase am I in right now? You know, what phase of my journey am I in? And it's kind of, you know, we notice, we pay attention, we open our eyes, we're looking at the world changing. I mean, the same would be true with the seasons. You know, when you see the leaves fall off the tree, you know, nature's going through her evolution. We're always evolving. And so, you know, motherhood, specifically, you had talked about motherhood. I mean, motherhood is a part of our legacy. You know, all of this, anything that we're doing is a part of our legacy. So it's just this rich, rich journey that we're on. And it's this understanding of the balance in life, the light and the dark, the ebb and the flow, as I was talking about earlier. It's how do we maneuver the balance? I mean, life is one big pendulum. And, sometimes we're moving this way and sometimes we're back this way and sometimes we settle in the middle. And how can we be okay when we're swinging one way or the other way and trying to bring ourselves back to the center? The truth is we never move through life in the center all the time. So this is one of the things when I work with the waning crescent moon with that ebb and flow energy. This is one of the things we work on, together with my clients and I, is really understanding that it's okay when you're not always in the center. If you're not in the center and you're swinging in this direction or this direction, just honor the way you're swinging and trust that you are meant to be going in that way. There's something there that you're intended to learn, to pick up, an experience you're meant to have. Just go with it. Just move with the flow of the energy. Grab what you need to grab, and then come back to the center. So it is about balance, and at the same time, it's about honoring when you're not unbalanced. When you're feeling imbalanced, it's about honoring that and just being present with it, and just noticing what it is you're meant to be getting out of that experience.
Yeah, and this is so key. The Cold Crush is all about ways to create partnerships, awareness, understanding that will enable a woman to stave off some of the isolation she may impose upon herself when she's too afraid to understand these transitions. When a woman is really afraid of being wrong, of being abandoned, of being disregarded, of being ill-equipped to manage these transitions, she may develop what I call a tundra around her soul. It's a vast wasteland that actually dispels intimacy and creates voids that people cannot penetrate and come through. A lot of women are performing happy faces and performing happiness when actually they have a really isolating parameter around their heart, an isolating parameter around their soul. And I think a part of what I'm getting from you, Tina, well, I'm getting 1,000 different things from you, but a key idea is that supporting the balance and managing the transition does include a consciousness around what one is afraid of and a practice in developing an awareness of what is possible next. Because there's loss and gain in these transitions. And however a woman in particular, is training herself to perceive loss and gain is really key. That's what I'm also getting here. So if you feel like you're losing your menstrual cycle, you're losing your children, you're losing your partner, you're losing a friend, you're losing your home, if you have to move, if you're losing, the way that I'm understanding the moon phases is to grasp where you are right now and to practice the sensibility of seeing ahead, not in a way that can make you anxious, looking too far into the future, but perceiving the bounty and possibility of what's coming next into your now. Is that a right way of understanding?
Yes, actually it is. And it's about moving forward with curiosity rather than fear. And and this is the other thing as you're speaking, Janine, I'm kind of getting this visual. It's about being at the crossroad. It's about when you're kind of standing outside, taking you back a little bit to standing out in the yard on the summer evening, you're up and looking at the sky. It's about honoring where you are in the present moment at any given moment. Just honoring and believing that as painful as it might be, and whenever we go through a transition, particularly a transition we didn't ask for. Sometimes we have transitions that we have planned, and then there are transitions that we haven't planned. So a spouse passes away, something that we didn't plan. And when we're in a transition like that, it's really about honoring where we are, paying attention to the emotion of it, really feeling into that and honoring. And there's an element of grieving that also never really gets spoken about a lot when we're going through transitions. And this is something I talk about a lot. When we're in a transition of any kind, there's grieving involved because we're closing doors that we might not be ready to close yet, or maybe we are and we're really realizing there's a little bit of heartache in it. You know, even when we make a conscious divorce, even when we decide to end our marriage consciously, there's still a little bit of pain in closing that door. Sure. And it's really about being in that moment, in that crossroad, and just being present and understanding and staying in that space. I think as a society, we tend to move too quickly. We want to get through things. We want to get to the other side of it. But I just want to invite everybody to just be in it. And pain, none of us want to feel pain, but there are a lot of gifts in our pain. There's a lot of, you know, just an experience of grieving that is a very human and a very natural thing. And another analogy that I invite women to think about, if you've got a transition, and just imagine coming out of one room and going into another, and before you do that, there's a hallway. So you've walked out of one room, you're looking into the room, and you're realizing this is ending. I will never be back in this room ever again. And there's a little bit of heartache, even when it's a choice you're making. So you're gently closing the door. The mistake we make is running across the hall and going right into the next room. What I want to invite everybody to think about, close the door and just sit in the hallway. Just be there. Just allow yourself to grieve. Allow yourself to feel whatever you want to feel. I can tell you on the verge of menopause that it is so unnerving. It's like I have no idea what's happening with my body. I have no idea where I'm going at this, you know, in this phase. You know, I look at my kids and they're moving, kind of graduating and moving on, and I'm looking at so many things in my life changing. I lost my mother very suddenly, 4.5 years ago, without warning. And I remember going through that grieving process, and you know, things just happen. And so we just have to be there with it. So we sit in the hallway and we just take it in, and we're there. It's like the tundra you were talking about. What happens when it just feels so dark and heavy and we don't know what to do? Let's just sit there. Just sit there and breathe and allow yourself to feel and allow yourself to get angry, whatever you feel like you need to do. You know, this is why I'm such a big believer in journal writing. You know, I'm always inviting women to just dump it out, be angry, be whatever it is you're feeling. It's okay. Get it all out. You know, this is the beauty of the moon phases. It's that darker part of this transition. Don't be afraid of the darkness. It is okay. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel confused. It's okay to feel angry. Let's process that. Let's get it out. Let's be with it. Let's understand it. And then once we've got it all out, then we can move to the light part. We can get ourselves up and we can walk into the next room. We can open the door with curiosity rather than dread. Because if we're walking into anything with dread, it means we haven't spent time in that pause area, in that hallway long enough. And so I just want to say to everybody, if you feel like you're in this tundra space, it's okay. It feels scary. I totally get it. But don't be afraid of it, because the light can only come if there's darkness. And we never know light if we don't know dark.
Yeah. And it's so powerful what you're saying here. I'm thinking so much now about, again, these different examples that I brought up at the beginning of the call, Tina, and your examples that you brought up in menopause and motherhood. And I'm thinking a lot about crushing that cold, letting it melt away, a lot of the iciness that we have around us. And I really, really want to emphasize again, in tandem with you, the power of journal writing. I am a sociocultural lyricist. I'm a classically trained anthropologist, and so I study the art and science of writing and reading and speaking and listening. And the process of writing is incredibly cathartic. The reason it's tied to therapeutic practice is because of its absolute necessity in the work of pushing forward through cold fronts, through isolating boundaries that have been created by individuals that block them off from the deepest parts of themselves. When you just talk, Tina, about not being afraid of the fear or not being afraid of the anger, actually what you described, I wanted to leap to the phone because I can remember a time, particularly when I was in the throes of narcissistic abuse. I dated 2 men who suffer from narcissistic personality disorder. And as a recovering codependent, I remember some of my darkest hours in that cycle of abuse, and I wouldn't allow myself to be angry. I stuffed my anger down because I was so detached from my rage, and it was difficult for me to own it. It was difficult for me to name it. Therefore, I couldn't let it process through me, whether to write it out or to talk it out. I stuffed and stuffed and stuffed, and what happens to the emotions that we stuff is that they become, they become just these, I guess, they become toxic.
Yeah, it's very, yeah. And I wanted to say too, it's like a cluttered room. Whenever we don't sort through the clutter and let go of the clutter, I mean, what you're describing is basically holding these thoughts inside your body, or not even allowing yourself to even have the thoughts. And so it stays with you. It's kind of like this clutter, if you will. It just kind of attaches itself to you, the toxic, thoughts or behaviors or whatever they might be. And this is the beauty of journal writing, because if you think about when we move house and we're packing our stuff up, we tend to go through kind of a decluttering. Do I need this? Do we want this? Do we want to move it to our new house? The same is true in any transition or any experience. The beauty of journal writing is we can really go through our thoughts, and we can go through our patterns and our emotional patterns and get a good understanding of, do we really need this in order to move here? Is this something we want to carry forward? And in journal writing, I always do this mind dump. I do a lot of mind dumping with clients because we toss all of these thoughts out. It's like an energy clutter. It's like, the cluttered, if you think about the mind as a cluttered room, we go through the cluttered room. And I do this beautiful exercise with women where we get very clear on what it is they need to release, whether it's thoughts, patterns, anything, what do we need to let go of in order to be able to close that door to this experience so that we can be in the hallway, do our grieving, and open the door to this new experience. What is it we need to let go of? What is it that we need to shift? Because sometimes we don't need to let go of something, but something about it needs to change. So, what is it we need to shift? And what is it we want to invite into? So we do this really beautiful clearing exercise of really getting clear on what it is that's holding us back. And using your example, Janine, it's about, society teaches us to not feel, so we can't even sometimes even acknowledge how we feel because we're all told, well, you can't feel that way. You got to keep going. I have a British husband, and he grew up being told, with a stiff upper lip, you can't feel anything. You just kind of keep going. Well, when we keep going like that and we haven't given ourselves the gift of sitting in the hallway, whenever we haven't given ourselves the gift of grieving or the gift of feeling or the gift of decluttering, we're just carrying it with us to the next experience. And it just keeps magnifying, and it becomes a pattern, and we keep attracting the same old, same old. So it's really key in a transition to just honor the grieving. And that's what happens. I mean, I will tell you in the moon phases, I spend a lot of time with women in that first moon phase, the new moon. I've had women say to me, oh my God, I didn't expect to spend so much time in this one moon phase. It's because in that place of new beginnings, there's a lot that's happening there when you're honoring a new beginning. There's a lot of the grieving. There's a lot of the decluttering. There's a lot of the awareness of patterns in your life. There's a lot of, just really acknowledgement of what it is that has brought you to this over and over again, or even to this. Even with what you were talking about with attracting, narcissists in your life, what is it about that pattern that we really need to sit and explore in this moment and really get a good understanding of why it keeps showing up, and what can we do to clear certain things so that you can move on with a different experience the next time.
That's right. Yeah. And it's powerful what you're saying. Oh my God, Tina, I feel a little bit like crying, but in the happiest way, it's because so much of what you said, I could comment on. One of the key ideas, though, is, and I want to say this to all of the women who are listening all over the world right now, we need to be very, very mindful of the fact that the world as it's been constructed, because of these patriarchal views, a lot of them are racist, they're sexist, they're ageist, they're ableist, hyper-masculine. We are tempted pretty constantly as women with the notion of detachment, isolation, that is removing ourselves from our seat of power, and just as you described, not remembering how to feel, going through life sort of robotically or logically, caught up in our own cognitive sequence, instead of digging into the space of our bodies and becoming very, very attuned to our rhythm, our movement, and our flutterings, our shutdowns, our clenchings, like whatever motions and movements your body does, you as a woman, I as a woman, we need to really heighten our soul consciousness, our soul awareness to be perfectly aligned with our bodies, so that when we feel what we feel, we don't disregard it. We don't stuff it down. We don't push it away. We don't belittle our feelings. We don't dismiss our feelings. We don't reject and abandon our feelings. What I learned as a recovering codependent was my inner voids were a result, an effect of my inattention to my interior life. I was not paying attention to my childhood wounds. I was not equipped to be aware of what it was that I needed and then actually supply my own needs. That's one of the reasons I needed to attach so desperately, and also one of the reasons I wouldn't allow myself to feel angry, because I didn't feel like I had the right to feel those things. And the other idea that I think I thought of while you were speaking is this idea of guilt and shame. There's a part of us as women, I believe, and I'd like to know your thoughts, Tina, there's a part of us as women that really knows when we're missing the mark, when we're not attuned, when we have developed this cold iciness where our femininity, our warmth and generative, organic, sensuous, present consciousness needed to be. And there's parts of us that are dismembered, disassembled, that are really angry. Like, well, a lot of us are angry with ourselves. We think we're mad at our kids for leaving us. We think we're mad at our parents for dying. We think we're mad at our spouses for, changing or divorcing us, or, I don't know, our friends from breaking up with us, whatever it might be. But a lot of it is we're mad at ourselves for not listening to ourselves, not caring for ourselves, not being a really good partner or parent to ourselves, and maybe giving up our power to others instead of connecting with these phases well.
Yeah, and I would invite everyone to really notice, I've been finding myself talking about this a lot lately, notice how you're reacting to something. Really pay attention to how you are responding to something. Things are always going to be happening around you, but you have control of how you respond and react. And if you're noticing yourself reacting in the same way over and over and over again, and it doesn't feel good, you do have the power to honor that and really be present with it and to go deeper with it. What is that about? What trigger is that hitting within me? And really paying attention to when you're being triggered anytime you're being triggered, it's an invitation to go deeper with yourself because there's something there that needs to be healed. There's something there that needs to be acknowledged. It's like a kid tugging at your skirt or your pants leg. And something wants to be noticed there, and it's okay. You know, there are all these wonderful opportunities in our life that feel really painful, but they're really good opportunities for growth. And the more that we can be aware of them and the more we can be aware of our own patterns and how we're reacting and why is this triggering me, what's this about, you know, go deeper with it. Go deeper with it. Allow yourself to just swim in the ocean, you know, and just really feel your way into that and honor it and let it teach you something.
Yes. Man, that is good, Tina. And I also encourage other women who are listening, who may not know what that means, what it looks like to feel your way through your life and feel your way through whatever situation or transition you're experiencing right now. Go ahead and get a coach. You can go to JanineStaples.com, theSupremeLoveProject.com. Tina's sites are available, journalingbythemoonlight.com. MoonlightMusePress.com. There are so many resources, and we're not greedy. None of us believe in poverty. We all believe in abundance. Don't worry about connecting with all of us. Anyone on this summit, find your perfect fit. Find the coach who will help you to learn what Tina is talking about in a practical sense. Because, and I say that, Tina, because I think a lot of women, especially I remember myself 7 years ago when I was really detached from my body, really detached from my interior life, and I did not trust myself, and I was racked with guilt and shame. Because of my codependency, I felt really deeply grieved by it, and I didn't know how to process my grief. Speaking of grief, I didn't know what it meant to feel. And also, I had been indoctrinated for a lot of pet theologies that came out of the Christian church that told me that my feelings weren't trustworthy anyway, that there's no point in learning to feel anything because you can't trust them. You can't trust your feelings. And using your feelings as a guide or a prompt for your life is a foolish or selfish thing to do. So I had to unlearn that doctrine and that set of beliefs before I could even begin to accept the notion that my feelings were significant, and not only significant, but absolutely integral to my survival. Integral to my survival. So get some help, ladies. Get some help.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And feelings open the door. I mean, if we could just feel our way into life. I mean, it's intuition, really. First thought, you know, I always say the first thought, best thought. You know, you hear that out there, but it's really the first feeling. You know, what is it that gets triggered first? You know, really pay attention without even thinking about it. What gets hit first? What is the very first feeling that comes across? You know, we're all very intuitive creatures, and we really do know. But what happens is we don't trust that first feeling. We kind of immediately jump into the thought and start analyzing something, and that's where we lose our connection with it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been just phenomenal. I'm so sorry that we're running out of time. I really want to talk to you about more things. There's so many great ideas that I want to link into. But I'm going to, Tina, invite you over to the Supreme Love Project. By the time this recording is broadcast live, I would love to have you over to the closed Facebook group so that you can answer questions and we can have an additional level of conversations. And just as a closing, I'd like for you to please bless us and leave us with 3 parting gifts. Just activities, work, ideas, key concepts, prompts that might help us to move forward from this conversation into our next phase. Well, I'm going to leave everybody with this quote, and I want you to, this is a quote that I use a lot when I'm working with clients in the new moon phase, in the place of new beginnings. It's by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and the quote is, people are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out. But when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there is a light from within.
Wow.
And I want to invite everybody to really honor that if you're feeling in this place of darkness, if you're feeling like in the tundra, as Janine was describing, if you're feeling like you're just in this place of unknowingness, just be there. Just sit in that hallway. Just be there. Just honor what it is that you're letting go of. Be present with it. allow yourself to feel it, allow yourself to grieve it, and just know that before you can move into any next transition, it's very, very important that you be present to what it is you're letting go of. Be fully present with it, acknowledge it, get a good understanding of what you're releasing, what you're hanging on to, what you're shifting, and allow yourself that space, that pause. It's the most important thing that I could say to anyone. Don't move too quickly. Allow yourself to grieve, allow yourself to be present, and to really honor the ebb and flow of life. And that's my third gift, is to really honor the ebb and flow of life and know that things are always ebbing and flowing. And it's okay. There will be times you'll feel balanced, and there'll be times that you're not. And when you're not on balance, if you're not feeling it, just be present to where you are, honor what's happening, honor what you're feeling, and just be aware and notice. Everything has a gift if you're willing to receive it.
Amen. Wow, perfect ending. I think this was just wonderful and fantastic. Tina Gaines, the Moonlight Muse, thank you so much for everything that you've given to us and gifted to us during this interview and this call. You are a blessing to Cold Crush and the Supreme Love Project, and I thank you so much.
Thank you, Janine. This has been a wonderful dialogue. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of it.
Absolutely. So everyone listening and tuning in, please hop over to the Supreme Love Project closed Facebook group for more conversation, to ask us intimate questions, get a little bit of perspective, offer maybe your story and experience to the group. And remember, take this message to heart, build it into your body, and I will see you on another episode of the Supreme Love Project. Bye-bye.
Thank you for participating in the Supreme Love Project. We're a division of Literacy for Life, LLC. Please visit thesupremeloveproject.com for more information about our products and services. Visit JanineStaples.com for more information about our beloved founder and president. And remember, take this message to heart and build it into your body. We'll see you next time, right here. The place to make love, not war, every day of your life.